Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast where comedians stop telling jokes long enough to explain why they tell them. Is it an act of rebellion, holding up a mirror to society, or simply the courage to turn failure into laughter? I sit down with comics who talk shop, tell stories and admit that yes, bombing is character development. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 2,000 different comedians perform live comedy, and you can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. Please also take a moment to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode originally hails from Northern Ireland and is now based in London with their partner. Together they host what has been repeatedly voted the best open spot in London, and just this year made their Edinburgh Fringe debut with their first hour, Train Man. It's comedian Caroline McEvoy. So when you think all the way back to the beginnings, growing up, family, television, was comedy a big influence on you back then?
So it's interesting. I don't know if this is common, probably not for comedians. I don't feel like comedy was necessarily a big part of my childhood in the sense that my parents never watched stand-up. It was never on TV. I have a vague memory once of being a child and my dad watching Michael McIntyre. And I was like, I think I was too young to understand why my dad was laughing so much. It was kind of going over my head a little bit. And I was kind of like, what's so funny about this? I didn't really get it. I feel like stand-up is something that I discovered much later in life. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say that I wasn't enjoying comedy in other ways. Like I used to always watch like a lot of funny cartoons. I was a big like sitcom watcher. I think I was consuming comedy, but in different forms. Like obviously everything from like The Simpsons to Friends, a lot of American sitcoms. I used to watch Community, Arrested Development as a teenager, and then I used to watch a lot of like little YouTube skits, but I feel like it wasn't something that my parents brought to me. They're nice people, but they're quite serious people. I feel like comedy is something that I like discovered externally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did it become a greater influence through like when you're going to college later on in life?
I feel like, do you know what it was? So do you mean like comedy or do you mean like pure like stand-up kind of thing? Like when did that come in?
No, just comedy in broad terms. I know you as a stand-up, but I don't know how much you've been involved in sketch or improv or other things as time has moved on.
Yeah. Oh, I understand what you mean. Yeah. I mean, I did see a few stand-up gigs during university and really enjoyed them, but I had no idea that you could, like anybody could just do comedy. I didn't understand how that worked. I used to do drama. Mm-hmm. I did like English literature and I always used to do a lot of writing. And then I also did a lot of drama growing up. So I used to be in a lot of school plays. I was part of the drama society in my university. I used to also make little cartoons and stuff. Whenever I was a kid, I used to make little comic strips, usually about me and my friends. I was trying to make people laugh. I just think I hadn't found like stand up as an outlet for that. Yeah. What kind of happened to me was I used to love performing, writing, all that stuff. And then whenever I graduated uni, I was like overtaken by, oh my God, I need to survive in the world and get a job and sort of find my way. And then the next few years of my early 20s were kind of consumed with figuring out what my job was going to be, where I was going to go. And then I ended up in London doing a marketing job. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that's over. I can now survive and I have an income and I'm okay. And then it was at that point that I was like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, what do I do for fun? And then I remembered, well, whenever I was a kid and when I was a teenager, performing and being part of those kind of groups was always where I had the most fun. Yeah. Either whenever I was like writing with friends or making stuff. And so for fun, I did the Hoopla it wasn't stand up, it was an improv beginners course that they run in London. Yeah. I did this in like 2018 as a way of just like making friends because I was new to London and I didn't know anybody here because I just moved that year. And then a guy in the improv group was doing a gig at Comedy Versions, the Cavendish Arms, mm-hmm. and he needed a bringer. So I was like, oh, I'll come, because I was just like, oh, that sounds fun. And the memory of going to see that gig really stands out in my head, because it was like one of these like almost like lightning bolt moments where I was like, oh, this is the thing that's like I've been looking for. This is the thing where like it's combined all of the things that I love in one thing, but also it's something that I can just get up and do. So I don't think that guy does comedy anymore, by the way, but his name was Charlie. And I asked Charlie, like, oh, how did you like get into this? And he told me about Angel, and then I started watching gigs at Angel, and then I did the Angel Beginners course in 2019. And then I've probably done a gig every week since then, bar COVID. It's kind of a roundabout way to get into comedy, because I feel like maybe other comedians grew up watching stuff, but I feel like for me, it was sort of like, it just was a natural end rather than something maybe that's always been with me. Like I went on a journey, and then at the end of it was comedy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Going into doing drama and then shifting from drama to comedy. I mean, did you do like more comedic roles when you were doing drama?
Well, that's the thing. I probably didn't even process that they were comedic roles at the time. But yeah, I was doing the comedy roles. I was in a production of Allo Allo. Like a play version of it. So I was playing one of the French women who's a waitress but having an affair with Renee, and I was going around doing like the French accent and like loving like getting the laughs. I was in like a play which was meant to be a serious play about Frankenstein, but I ended up being Frankenstein's wife, and I didn't say anything. I just died on stage, but it was actually always just really funny because I was dying dramatically on stage and getting laughs and things like that. So even I thought I was doing drama, but actually when I think about it, I was doing comedy.
Yeah. So then making that shift and then going into improv and then into stand-up, did it turn out to be everything that you anticipated it would be, or did you get some certain surprises along the way?
I don't know if I went into it with any expectations, but I think it's been it's been much bigger than I ever thought it would be, because obviously I kind of was approaching it like, oh, this might be a fun thing to do, a way to meet friends. And now it's become like my career, and not my entire social world, but quite a lot of my social world now is like built around comedy. I met my partner Alfie through comedy. Like it's so much more than just going out and doing gigs. It's become such a kind of focal point of my life. I've even like changed jobs to have a job that's more adjacent to the comedy world. It's just like, it's completely taken over my life, but in like a really good way, but definitely not in a way that I could have predicted. I didn't know that there was so much to it. Yeah.
So you said about doing the course at like Angel, and then presumably there was a showcase at the end of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That course was great. There was a showcase. It's really funny looking back at that, because there's only two other people now from that course who I think are still doing comedy. One of them is a guy called Matt Lowe's, and the other person is Jess Ashkenazi, who's gone in a completely different direction and is now, she went and did Gaulier, and then she just did her debut show at Edinburgh, which was called Tit Clown. So it's like we've all gone in like very different directions, but it's quite cool to kind of track the progress of how everyone's done since graduating the course. So yeah, it was like a 6-week course. Was it 6 weeks? I can't remember. It was like 2019, so it's so long ago now. But we did the course. During the course, Jess knew a lot more about the comedy world than I did. I think I came in just like, oh, what's this? But she seemed to know a bit more about how it all worked. So I actually, from talking to her, was encouraged to book a gig before the end of the course. So I actually did my first gig maybe like 2 weeks before the showcase, and it was good. I think in retrospect, because I've got the tape and I can see that it wasn't actually good. But what happened was the guy who was hosting introduced me by saying, this is her first ever gig. So everyone was like, oh, and so they were really nice to me. So I was like, I'm amazing. I walked out of that. So I did that. And then I did the showcase gig. And the showcase gig, again, was lots of people basically doing comedy for the second or first time ever. And all of our friends had come to watch us. And it was at the Bill Murray. And it was obviously the nicest gig ever. So I really went into like comedy with this almost like false sense of, I really know what I'm doing. Like I've really got this. And then I think the third ever gig I did, I was like, oh wait, this is actually harder than I thought. Because at that point, I wasn't playing to a room full of people who were so predisposed to be friendly.
Yeah. Did you have in mind the type of comedian that you were going to be or that you wanted to be?
No, I really didn't. And I'm kind of glad for that because there's some people, you know, I think suffer a little bit when you've got your idols. Sometimes people are influenced by them. Like, I don't think it's anyone's fault, but there's a lot of guys on the circuit who are sometimes accused of being like James Acaster impersonators, which I don't think anyone's doing that deliberately, but obviously like you get influences or whatever. But I think maybe because I didn't grow up watching stand-up, I didn't really have any idea what I was doing, or I didn't have a person in mind to emulate. I think when I first got into it, I was watching a lot of American comedians, and for the first 6 months or so, there was this sort of faux, almost Catherine Ryan-esque thing coming out of me on stage, which is like, and well, you've seen me do comedy. I'm so not a Catherine Ryan style act. Like, that's just not me. But I think I was doing like an impression of like a confident North American style act and making sex jokes and just not really being true to myself, but just figuring out how to write jokes. And then there was this thing that happened. Long story short, there was like a long, like 5-minute set that I did, which was a story about a drug deal going wrong. And that was like the first time that like, I think I cracked, oh wait, no, this is how I be myself on stage and how I like, cause like, I feel like if Catherine Ryan style comedians did the drug deal, it would have gone well and something else would have happened. But in my case, I completely fluffed the whole thing and it was a real embarrassing, awkward mess. And I was like, oh, you can be embarrassing and like awkward and like authentically like the kind of person that you actually are on stage, and people respond to that. So I think that's when things started to shift and I was kind of figuring it out. And then COVID happened, and then that was a bit of a weird gap in my comedy CV because between like 2020 to 2022, couldn't really do gigs. Did the occasional Zoom gig, which were awful. Don't recommend them. Zoom podcasts are fine. This is nice. But like Zoom gigs, it's like, you can't, you know, I did a few, and like, it's awful because no one is laughing naturally. You can't, it's just weird. Anyway, so, and then in 2022, then I came back sort of in full force and started gigging again regularly. And I've just been going pretty steadily ever since then.
Yeah. Well, what about that persona of you then on stage? I mean, you're talking about it, about how much of it is you and being yourself and being more natural. How much of it is you? How much is the person that we see a version of you or an exaggeration of you or a character of you?
I guess it's definitely an exaggeration, but I'm not a character comedian. Like, no. I'm not someone who's, because some people I think of a more deliberately crafted persona. I don't think I went in like that. I think I was just trying to figure out how to be myself, but be funny on stage. And I think that that's still what's going on. Yeah. But now I feel like I'm a more like extreme version of myself on stage. And I'm still learning how to push that, I think, a little bit for comedic effect. But pretty much all of what I talk about will be, autobiographical or true or something that I really think, but I've just kind of dialed it up to 100. So maybe some kernel of my true opinions in there, but I've just gone, how can I push this or make this funnier, if that makes sense? Yeah. But it's definitely a version of me, like the sitcom character version of me, I would say.
Well, let's talk about your festival experience, because we're going to talk about your Fringe show this year, which, as you say, is autobiographical in nature.
It was extremely autobiographical.
So we'll come to that, but how about your Fringe experience as a whole? Because I remember seeing you do a split with Farrah Sharp in 2022.
Oh my God.
At the Mash House?
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Mash House. What was that like? Did you come on a good day? I hope so.
Well, I mean, what was a good day? It was about half full, I'd say.
Well, it was quite a big room, so considering that we were like nobody's from nowhere at that point, it probably wasn't a bad day. I just meant, did we have good sets?
Yeah, it was very good. It was very good.
Okay, that's nice. That's something. Yeah, that feels so weird. So that feels so, it is so long ago now. That's like 3 years ago now. That was great. I liked doing it with Farah. We're good friends. I feel like we were very, like, it was nice being there for somebody else while doing it for the first time, because Fringe, I think I wasn't expecting it to be so intense the first time I ever did it.
Mm-hmm.
But every year, I've done it since then, because I've done work in progresses up until now when I've just debuted. It's always intense. This year was the most intense because this was the first time that I've ever done the full month. And it was also the first time I'd ever like invited in reviewers. It was also the first time that I had like put a lot more money into it, which I think heightens the stakes, because this year I paid for for my savings, I paid for like a PR, which I'd never done before. And I paid for, a director, and I did I put a lot of money into like the posters and stuff like that. So, which I do think was worth it. But obviously like it increases pressure, because you're like, oh, I've invested so much in this, it better go well. Thing. But I'm happy with how the experience went overall. I always really enjoy Fringe. I think it's amazing. Like there's nothing like it. But I also think that sometimes you're in the middle of it and you're like, why have I done this? Because something will go, even if something's not actually gone wrong, sometimes you've just like, it's just stressful, because I was flyering every day, and that takes a physical toll. And then you have to be on stage for an hour every day, and that takes a toll. And then you don't know who's in the room. Sometimes there might be reviewers. Sometimes there might be, I don't know, producers or whoever you've invited. And that creates a different kind of stress, but you also don't want to let that affect your performance. So, I think I was sort of dealing with all of that stuff for the first time. Whereas before, when I was doing work in progress shows, it didn't really matter. Whereas this year there was a bit more like, oh, people are actually watching what I'm doing this year, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Were you super conscious of it being like your hour debut? Like you say just then about inviting in reviewers and what have you. You're putting yourself out there to the industry and saying, I'm setting out my stall now for the first time.
Yeah, I think a lot of comedians put that kind of pressure on the debut. I know that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, maybe I didn't need to put so much pressure on it. Because it's just the first show. Like that might have been a more helpful way of thinking about it. I'm going to make more shows. That was the first show. I think it was a good show. It will by no means be the best show I ever make, kind of thing. It's the start. I think I've laid a strong foundation, and I'm really happy with how it went. But I'm also now thinking about, what could I do differently? What kind of thing might I make next? And I think that that's all really good. I think comedians, sometimes we just get caught up in like, oh, it's the debut, and then it's reviewers, and then it's like awards. But like, there's only a handful of comedians who will get awards anyway. There's lots of good shows. There's not enough awards, I would say, to like honor how many good shows there are. And also, the nature of the industry is changing. Like it might have been like, I don't know, even pre-COVID, I don't know, it might have been that someone's getting discovered at the Fringe, or, but I feel like now, because Fringe is so expensive, less and less industry are going up, because they simply cannot afford it. And I feel like other things are now how comedians, like obviously building an online presence has become much more of a important thing. And I feel like that's actually maybe more how people are being discovered now, or like making contacts. I feel like the Fringe is changing, and that's okay. But maybe that means that could take a little bit less pressure off the debut, actually, if the debute's not the thing that's going to launch your career. It might. I'm not saying it doesn't for some people, but I think the number of people that it's launching is getting smaller.
Yeah. Well, what about the competitive aspect then, in terms of, like you say, there's all these shows, you're competing for attention, or indeed in competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, like, obviously there's this kind of weird thing in comedy where, like, we're all kind of, a lot of people know each other and we're friends, and I'm happy for my friends. But at the same time, I guess people are also always looking over each other's shoulders and going, this person's got this, why didn't I get this? And that's kind of a hard thing to have to kind of work through mentally. But actually speaking to my actor friends is kind of how I've worked out how to feel about that, because I have a friend, and she's not a comedian, but she's an actress by trade. And she says that the difference for her is, like, she grew up going to auditions, and it was never a thing of like, oh, if this person gets this thing, that means that you won't get it. It was always like, that just means that that opportunity was for that person at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That role was for that person at that time. You can be happy for them. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get the next thing, kind of thing. And I think that that's a really healthy mindset. And I also think that it's true fundamentally in comedy. Like, if you're good, if you work hard, if you, you know, just keep going, I feel like I've seen too many people make it now to not be like, oh yeah, something's going to happen eventually. I don't know what that something is. Like, it might not always be what you expect, but like, I don't know, even though like I wasn't like nominated for best newcomer or whatever at Fringe, I've had multiple things happen because I did my debut hour at Fringe. Like, I've had other people contact me asking me to do other Fringes later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to venues across the UK about touring my show. I'm talking to producers. It's like things are happening. It's just, it's exciting, I would say. It feels like I've done what I set out to do, which was set up like a strong foundational year and kind of announce myself to the industry. God, this is very careery talk. I'm making me sound like very like, I'm just sort of talking through like my own mental process around some of this stuff. But yeah.
Tell me about the show. What was the show about? What would potentially audiences expect?
Yeah, so the show was very autobiographical. It's about my brother. I grew up with, my younger brother has autism, and that's what the show is about, basically. It's kind of about our relationship growing up. Whenever I was doing work in progress shows before, I was doing almost what felt like long club sets, whereas when it came to writing my debut hour, I really wanted to do something that had a kind of a storytelling element to it. I mean, I know you talked about influences earlier. Actually, I think I'd argue that maybe a later influence for me might be the likes of Mike Birbiglia. I really like the way he approaches storytelling. I think he's like the master of it. And I wanted to do something like that had, not like that in the sense like I was sort of inspired by him, in the sense I wanted to do a show that followed a narrative. And it kind of harks back to my sort of writing days when I used to do a lot of writing as a teenager. And I always used to write short stories, and it felt like a very natural fit for me. Like I wanted something where I was, just creating a story. But then I was like, oh, I don't really know what to talk about. And then there was basically, I think it was last summer, there was just an incident with my brother back in Northern Ireland. I don't think I can say what without spoiling the show, but my mum rang me to tell me something that had gone on with my brother. And it sort of like got me thinking, God, that's actually quite a big part of my life. Like, I grew up with a profoundly disabled brother, and I've almost just took it for granted. I've never actually talked about that on stage, but actually that is kind of an unusual experience, and it's not something I've heard a lot of people talk about, and it's actually often quite funny. Like, it's because you end up in sort of unusual circumstances when you're growing up with someone with my brother's level of autism, because there was a lot of kind of quirks about how I was raised that I took for granted, but actually were because he had, certain needs or sensitivities. Like, this didn't go in the show, but like, there was a mad thing where like, there's this few years where we had to like take really specific routes through towns because my brother got really upset if he heard the sound of beeping traffic lights. So he would sometimes go in these like mad expeditions to like really long routes, really long car journeys, all because we were managing his sensitivities and stuff like that. But then for me as a child, not being that much older than him, I would then be getting annoyed and being like, oh, this is taking ages. There'd be this kind of like friction between us sometimes. Like, the usual sibling rivalry stuff comes up, but it's exacerbated by the fact that he is autistic. And so his needs did often sort of were placed above mine. Not because my parents, like, they were great parents, and I think that they did an amazing job, but at the end of the day, he was a more demanding child than I was. So a lot of the time I just had to kind of go along with whatever was going on. But anyway, I was just sort of like reflecting on all of that. And I was like, God, it's really interesting thinking about all of the kind of quirks and interesting anecdotes that we have about our childhood. And then also then looking at our lives as adults, because we're living quite different lives, because he's almost 30. He still lives with my parents. He is he goes out independently, but he relies on them for support. But he's also pushing the boat out a lot and trying to be more and more independent as he gets older. And recently, he came to London, so he traveled independently for the first time to visit me in London. And that's kind of that London trip then became like a frame that I could tell the story of our relationship and how it's changed over the years.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the show starts, is I'm waiting for him to arrive in London, and it kind of ends with the trip to London, and that becomes the frame. That became the frame, and then the stories all it kind of became like a blend of storytelling and me also like including my stand-up bits and just trying to make the show as funny as possible, but also flow. And that's kind of, it developed over the course of a year. And I worked with a director, Ben Target, really closely on that, which was amazing. He was fantastic because he's obviously had that experience himself. Where Ben has made all kinds of things, actually incredibly like diverse CV, but has made a storytelling style show, Lorenzo. So that was quite good to sort of draw on some of his experience, and he would like set me homework and I would go away and I would write and I would sort of really drill into my memories of what it was like with my brother. And the show itself is called Train Man because growing up, one of my brother's special interests for years was trains. So there ended up being quite a lot of train-based or transport-based anecdotes which have made their way into the show. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah. You talked there about the writing and having direction. Do you have a sort of a comfort zone? Like, are you happiest in the writing or developing a show, or do you enjoy more being like an MC or having a spot on a mixed bill?
Oh, no. I mean, I enjoy all of those things, but writing the show was like the best thing ever. It was like the first time I was like, oh, you know, I want to do more of this kind of stuff. I do love MCing. And I do like doing a spot on a mixed bill, but it's different having an audience to yourself for an hour and being able to kind of take that time with them and they get to know you and take them on a journey. That was really rewarding. And it was rewarding for me running over different drafts of the show, doing whips, trying out new material, sometimes getting rid of new material because it just didn't have a place in the show. That whole process was just really satisfying.
Let's talk about Comedy Bandits. So, which you run with Alfie.
Yes, we've been running that since 2020. Basically, Comedy Bandits, it's an open mic night which came out of COVID. After COVID, there was like the comedy scene really changed. Like a lot of nights shut down. And then the gigs, when they did start back, the people who were getting the gigs were obviously the people who were just that bit more established, which is fair enough. Like, I mean, why would you book me when you could book Fern Brady in 2022? I completely get that. But that is what was happening. So, it kind of came from a place of me wanting stage time. And well, us like wanting stage time and kind of, but also reflecting on what we thought were the good nights in 2019. Like, what if we're going to do an open mic night, let's do one that like is actually good. not to be too harsh on some open mic nights, but they're not all good. But we kind of, there were some nights that we really loved. Like, obviously Angel Raw is an incredible like open mic sort of, is it open? It's semi-open mic, I would say. You have to apply, you do open spots there. But actually, another one would have been Funny Feckers. I don't know if you ever went to their gigs, but that was always a really good open mic night run by Wes Dalton. And he kind of went away. He doesn't run gigs in London anymore now. I think he still brings a version of Funny Feckers to Edinburgh, but he's not based in London anymore. But we always remembered like the vibe of that night. And we were like, oh, can we create something that's like just fun and good? And you know, we really make an effort to like, to do that. We always make sure we have different types of acts. We have different levels of acts. We have, we always, as much as possible, try and make sure it's a balanced lineup. And I don't just mean in terms of gender. I mean, we try, from the applications to make sure that the lineups have a balance of people from different backgrounds and identities and sexualities. And we just try and make sure it's eclectic, even different styles of comedy. We like to have that because we like the variety of it. We don't want someone to come to Comedy Bandits and feel like they've just seen the same act like 10 times. We want like a mix of stuff.
Yeah.
And we like taking turns emceeing. Sometimes we get guest MCs. I think that's also good because it means for the returning audience, which we do have now, it's mixing it up. They're not just seeing the same people. And then we also use it for ourselves to just try and get better, both as performers, like we both MC. And I think that's been great for both of us to get more confident on stage and get more confident improvising and talking, making jokes off the cuff, but also we use it to trial new material. So quite a lot of my show got written at Comedy Bandits.
Yeah. And it's been recognised by Chortle for the last 3 years as London's best open spot.
Which is lovely. It's really nice because that's something that people have to vote for. So the fact that people have voted for us 3 times in a row is genuinely such a huge compliment. I'm just glad people like it. I hope they continue to like it.
Yeah. So we've talked about awards and things a little bit at Fringe, and obviously now this recognition through public vote. What about personal recognition? I know that you've been longlisted at Funny Women multiple times. How do you feel about awards in general, getting those kind of accolades?
So I used to care way more about new act competitions, and now I really don't care. I think they don't that much of it. I think, I don't know, I just think that like, if you won something in like 2022, so what? I think actually what I've learned is the really satisfying thing is just yourself getting better and watching yourself get better. And I film all of my gigs and I can see the progress. I can still go back and look at that first gig I did in 2019. Literally, I've got my first gig on tape and look at that and be like, wow, I'm completely changed. And every year I can see that like my own progress as a performer and as a writer. And that's actually where I get the validation from. I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to bother entering any more competitions because honestly, they just like, you get so far, you get to the semis, you get to the finals, and then you do it and you're like, ugh, I don't know. I don't really like them. So, and so many of them are flawed. Like so many of them, comedy is so subjective and it feels weird to sort of pit people against each other like that for the sake of these accolades, which often don't translate into any actual, career progress. Some competitions, yes, but a lot of them, no. And, it's a nice thing to put on a poster, but at the end of the day, do I think the person, I don't know. I just don't think that they, I don't find them satisfying to do. Like, it's not really why I got into comedy, to win like best 5 minutes at the new act competition. I'm much more interested in like building like something long term. Yeah. And I think people get too, I think people get too hung up on this stuff. Just because you didn't go through a round of like a competition, that doesn't mean that you're not a good comedian. It just means that maybe, on that particular day, someone else had a better set, or maybe you just weren't what the judges were looking for, because every competition has its own judging process. And some competitions have flawed judging processes. Some competitions are like, you have to bring friends to perform and then friends all vote for their friends. And it's kind of like, that's not really a true win. So, basically in a nutshell, comedy competitions are not good, is my opinion. Yeah.
Well, how about then comedy as an entertainment for you? Do you still watch comedy, and do you watch it with the comic eye, or are you able to just be entertained by it?
I love seeing shows. I love going to comedy bills. I like watching my friends. I have so many talented friends as well. I like watching comedians I don't know. I do watch it differently now. Yes, I think I'm a lot more analytical and kind of, I think it's just because I know how it works now. So I'm watching what they're doing, but it's a different type of enjoyment. I enjoy the craft of it, So yeah, I am watching it differently, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that you get re-inspired or re-motivated when you see other comedians doing well?
Yeah, I definitely do. This year I was really inspired by all the clowns at Fringe because I've never done clowning and that's a new thing for me. And there's so much that you can kind of like take from, the clowning world they all have their own little tricks and things that they up their sleeve. And I was kind of watching them going, oh, I wonder what that would look like in a stand-up context. Yeah, I like watching stuff that kind of surprises me or catches me off guard. I definitely lift from other performances. Now that the Fringe is over, I've been saying to Alfie, I really want to start going to the theatre more. And I want to just kind of explore that world. I'm not trying to be an actor or anything like that, but I feel like you can learn something from all the different performing arts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there something specifically in mind that you want to incorporate into the future or something that you want to turn your hand to that you haven't done so yet, like the theatrical aspect of comedy or clowning, for example?
Well, I have toyed with the idea of doing a clown course, but I don't think I'm going to become a clown or anything like that. I think because I'm just so fresh back from Fringe, I haven't entirely figured out what the next thing is for me. I think maybe, at the risk of sounding like a dickhead, might start a podcast. No offense to you who has a podcast, but you know what I mean. Like two comedians, like I don't know, talking to each other podcast. I am really good friends, and this might surprise people because we don't seem like we'd be natural friends. But do you know Lou Fitz, the comedian Lou Fitz?
Yes, yeah.
He's a sort of a mad guy, but you know him, so yeah. So we're like best friends, and we're a really weird match. But we actually lived together during the pandemic, and we were talking. We lived together for like 2.5 years. During that time, he got a kitten, which kind of became my kitten. So now it's kind of like the cat that lives with him is sort of like my cat, but not really. Anyway. We just have like, I don't know. I think we have a funny dynamic, but that's probably what every comedian says before they start a podcast with their friend. But we have been talking about in very early theory about maybe starting a project like that together. Because I think I'd like to do something like that. And just try my hand at a different format. I have like made podcasts before. I made a podcast with Alfie, which was like a scripted, more kind of improvised thing where I was much more in a producer role. But I'd quite like to have a go at doing something that's more like chatty and just having a nice time with my friend.
Yeah. Do you set yourself like regular targets, things that you want to achieve, or it might be as simple as venues you want to play at or bills you want to appear on? Do you have those kinds of objectives?
Yeah. I do. I'm a very list-driven person, as anyone who saw my show this year will know. There's a whole list motif that is recurring throughout the thing. But yeah, I'm a big to-do list person. So, but yeah, Fringe was weird because everything was like, I did Edinburgh Fringe, and now I'm doing Dublin Fringe, and everything was like, that all of my lists were like revolving around, what do I need to do for this? What do I need to sort for that? And I have a blank space after Dublin, which is why podcast has kind of vaguely started to drift in there. I think some things will get added to the list, but I definitely like set goals and like have things that I want to do. I think it's just sort of baby steps, isn't it? And then you kind of turn around and you're like, oh, I've actually come quite far. So that's good.
Yeah. Do you think you've learned one particular lesson that you take with you forward?
Yeah, just keep going. Just keep doing it. It's paying off. I can see it's paying off, you know.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, then, what do you think have been the best and worst experiences you've had in comedy so far?
Some of my best experiences have definitely been like doing this show this year, for sure. Also, like, running Bandits has been very rewarding because, you know, it's quite cool whenever like we're running the gig. Like last night I was back emceeing it for the first time after Fringe, and it was rammed. We ran out of seats. Yeah. But that was quite a cool thing to be like, oh, we built this. This is like quite a cool thing to have like made, and it was just a really fun show. So there's definitely moments like that are like just highlights. Yeah. In terms of worst moments, probably being like ill at the top of Arthur's seat. No, that was actually a fun experience. But like, there's definitely been like bad moments. I think like the things that are the bad moments are like when you let yourself get too like disappointed that you didn't, I don't know, get through a round of a competition or whatever. I did just say to you, I don't like competitions, but I think like part of that also comes from like, just like they don't make you feel good. That's not why you got into it. Like this is, I think getting too caught up with like these silly things that don't really matter. And if you ever get jaded by those experiences, that's when I'm having a bad time.
Yeah.
But when you kind of get a bit of perspective and take a step back, you're actually like, oh, who cares? Like, I don't know. I didn't get through the semi-finals of a competition in 2022. And at the time I was like, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. And now I am like, that did not matter. It didn't matter. But that at the time I was like, oh no, I won't be the Cherry Comedy Breakout Act of the Year. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I don't even know who won that year.
What about then feedback? So Comedy Bandits is a multiple winner of a public vote, but you would have had additional feedback in the form of reviews and things like that for your Edinburgh show. I mean, how do you respond to getting reviews and things like that?
I find it okay, actually. I was really like cagey about it whenever I was going in. I was like, oh, I said to my PR, I don't want to know if reviewers are in. And then I very quickly was like, oh no, I do actually want to know. So I was incorrect about that. I actually preferred knowing that they were there if they were there because, and I find it didn't actually affect my performance. I thought it was going to make me worse, but it didn't. It made me, it was, because to be honest, you see them anyway. They have lanyards, so it's obvious that they're there. So it's kind of like, there's no point ignoring them. I just kind of just accept them as another member of the audience and just kind of go with it. Yeah. And the thing about reviews is, again, like comedy's so subjective. At the end of the day, a lot of these people are, you know, they're comedy fans with blogs. And so it's one person's opinion. And the people that loved the show, great. And the people who maybe it wasn't so much for them, that's fine. I actually didn't get, I mean, touch wood, but I didn't get any bad reviews. I got anything from like good to great. So maybe also that's another thing for me is like, there were definitely acts who I think undeservedly at Fringe this year were getting some really like more harsh reviews, but no one was particularly scathing towards me. Maybe I would be having a different response if someone had like written a review that felt, because some people were getting reviews that didn't actually feel like they were critiquing their work, which is one thing. They felt a lot more personal and targeted, which is that's not good criticism. I do think in comedy in general, there is a lack of maybe professionalism in the kind of critical side of things. It doesn't feel like, you know, I don't know. It feels like in literary criticism, there's a much more robust world of critics who kind of really know their stuff. Whereas in comedy, it feels like there's maybe like one or two people who really know their stuff, and a lot of other people are quote people with blogs who, you know, but I mean that it's like their opinion is still valid. I just mean that it's not journalists, is it? Maybe that's an indication of like comedy not being taken seriously by the wider kind of arts sector, which is an issue in and of itself. And I shouldn't expect a blog to have a kind of robust critical response to my show the way I would expect The Guardian to, you know, and I don't. I think that I'm glad that the people who came and reviewed it liked it, and they're all welcome back. And I hope that they continue to like my shows, because at the end of the day, those are comedy fans too. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? But yeah, I don't like the ones where it's one thing to have like a critical response to a show. Like there might be stuff in the show that you don't like, but I think the difference is sometimes where the lines blurs. There were some reviewers, not in my experience, all my reviewers were actually very nice, but there are some reviewers who seem to be going after the comedians themselves, which I felt like that's not actually what you're meant to be doing as a reviewer. You're meant to be critiquing the work, not critiquing, oh, I don't like this person that I see on stage kind of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've had that conversation recently with another awards judge, because I judge awards here and there.
Oh.
I had a conversation recently with another awards judge, and they're saying, "Oh, I didn't like that person because of this, this, and this." I said, "Well, yeah, but that's not what you're judging. You're judging whether future audiences will enjoy their comedy.
Yeah,
It's not whether you like them or not."
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. Also, now that you said you're an awards judge, I actually love awards and I take everything back. So I would love to win something. Are you crazy?
Okay, duly noted. I'll make a note. Put that down.
Thank you. Wait, what awards do you judge?
The Leicester Comedy Festival, on the awards panel there, and the Ish Edinburgh Awards. I'm on that panel as well.
Again, I love all of those awards. I would say those are the exception.
Yeah,
No.
They're the good ones.
There are some good. I'm not saying that. I think that awards are great, but I just think you do yourself a disservice as a comedian when you get too caught up in whether or not you've won one.
Yeah. So we've talked about you performing in London. We've talked about you doing the Edinburgh Fringe and then, of course, Dublin. Mm-hmm. So how does your comedy, if at all, change performing to different audiences? And how does the way your comedy is received in those places, influence you in return?
Yeah, I think because obviously I'm from Northern Ireland, but living in London. So with that comes a certain outsider status that you can play with.
Yeah.
But as soon as you're in Northern Ireland and you go, have you guys heard of the Troubles? Everyone's like, fuck. It's like, yeah, I've had to change some of that. In Dublin, I need to think about what I'm gonna change some of the show for the Dublin audience because I went to university in Dublin. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a lot of I just know the city really well and know the culture. So I feel like that's an opportunity for me to play and have a little bit of fun and maybe introduce some new jokes, which I've kind of been thinking about a little bit in the week in between Edinburgh Fringe and Dublin Fringe. Yeah. So yeah, in a nutshell, I definitely do change some of what I'm talking about. But most of it translates. It's just the occasional thing where you're like, well, there's no point doing a joke explaining the Troubles to an audience in Belfast because they know what I'm on about.
Yeah.
And obviously if you're performing in a different country, there's some references that will not translate. If I was, I don't know, gigging in Barcelona, which I have done before, there's certain, cultural references to things on British or Irish TV that wouldn't translate.
Yeah.
So if you kind of familiarize a little bit yourself with the town or the city or wherever you're gigging, I feel like people really appreciate that because it feels like you're saying, oh no, I see you and I'm doing this for you. I think people like that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's something that's come up before. It's always good to have a local reference because then suddenly people go, they know us, they understand us. Yeah,
yeah. It feels like then you're actually in the room with them. Yeah. They're like, oh, this person's a real person and they've done their research,
Yeah. And with that in mind, and with you having said that you did Hoopla previously, how much does being able to improvise or how much does actually improvising form part of what you do when you have a carefully considered and written show? How much do you include improvisation in that to make sure that you are present in the room, like you said?
I did way more crowd work than I thought I was going to do at Fringe because I thought I had this kind of, as you say, carefully prepared show.
Yeah.
But then I still find that I sometimes wanted to go off script and have those interactions because I think that that's the sort of the magic thing about live comedy is those little unprepared moments or things that you're not expecting or that's when you get sparks with the audience. So I actually ended up doing that. I think there wasn't one show when I didn't do some crowd work.
Yeah.
So that was the emceeing has really helped me with that because when I first started comedy, I was so I had my 5-minute set and I had learned it, and I would not go off script, and I would stick to the script, even when the script was not working. And I was so nervous to let go of that. And running comedy shows and hosting comedy shows has made me let go of that. So that's really good.
Yeah. So how can listeners find out all about you and where they can come and see you performing?
So I think this podcast will come out after I've already done Dublin Fringe. Otherwise, I would have plugged that. But in future shows, I think the best thing to do is I've got Instagram, obviously. So that's Caroline McEvoy Comedy. Mm-hmm. And also on TikTok, just Caroline McEvoy, because I'm quite proud of being the first Caroline McEvoy to set up a TikTok account. So I managed to get in there. But if you follow me there, I'll be posting about future things, whether that's a podcast with Lou. I think I'm also going to start doing Substack. These are my vague goals post-Fringe, which is podcast and Substack and some kind of tour. I think I want to take the show around the UK and Ireland. Mm-hmm. So genuinely, the best thing to do is just like follow me on social media, because that's where all of the updates will go.
Yeah. So my last question then is the title of the show. How, Caroline, would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
Oh, how would I sum up comedy in a nutshell? I just think it's the best thing ever. I do. And that sounds like really like, oh, but I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like it's such a shame that comedy is not taken as seriously, I think, by the wider art sector. I feel like drama is seen as more prestigious, but I actually feel like comedy is harder to write. Please don't come at me, drama writers, but it's hard to be funny. Actually a lot harder than it looks. And I always even felt that like when I was a kid and I was reading books and stuff like that. Like I remember reading Catch-22, mm-hmm. which is very funny, and being like, whoa, this must have been hard to, like, I don't know, with jokes you have to, I mean, I like things that blend both, I would definitely say, like, and there's some incredible drama writers out there. I'm not saying I don't want to like pit two genres against each other, even though I definitely just have. But I just feel like comedy writing is really hard. And I think that people don't always realize that, because the art is to make it look like it's not hard. It's to make it look like it's breezy and that people are just coming up with it. But actually comedians have like taken ages to really like, you know, turn around these tight sentences or like make it as, you know, me and Alfie talk a lot about like word economy. Like they've made you laugh in the quickest amount of time possible. And that's like quite a feat. Editing's quite hard. Editing in comedy is as important as the actual kind of initial writing of the joke. And then you have to practice it in often quite difficult circumstances in these open mic gigs. And yeah, like I feel like it's just underappreciated as an art form. And it's actually, I think, one of the best. Because you feel amazing. Like if you're an audience member and you go and you see a good comedy show, there's not really anything like it, is it? Like the lift that gives you in terms of how you feel is incredible.
For sure. Caroline, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been delightful talking with you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.